Hi guys, welcome back to the Fight Podcast with Sharir Richmond.
Hello.
And with me, Jan. Welcome back, guys, and welcome back, Sharir.
It's good to be here. How you doing?
I'm fine. How about you?
I'm doing good.
You're doing great? First of all, what are we talking about today?
Anything you want to talk about? Let's go.
I have something in mind. We talked about this earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And I know there's a lot of bullshit about this online.
Okay.
Let's talk guns.
Guns?
Let's talk gun disarmament. Let's talk bullshido gun disarmament. So, in general, when you Google this, when you just go onto YouTube or something, you Google gun disarmament. There's a lot of video. There's a lot of video material on there. What do you think about what is out there? What's your take on what you've seen so far?
My take on gun disarming?
On what you've seen on YouTube.
I don't watch that much gun disarming. I just seen a little bit. Mostly because I don't want to waste my time.
That's a take?
Yeah. Yeah. Gun disarming, and I would say to a big extent, is bullshit.
So you've seen the kind of stuff that people put out there? Because I think for a lot of Krav studios or for a lot of Krav providers, this is like one of their main selling points. Like, we can show you how to take an AK-47 in like 17 different ways and lying on the ground, and then it's like one of the parts that sells their system, apparently.
Sadly, I say Krav is famous for gun disarming and let's say knife defense.
Mm-hmm.
Those two topics, and in those two topics, sadly, you have most of the nonsense too.
So you're saying sadly, not because it's something you shouldn't worry about, but because most of what you've seen so far is not very accurate.
It's also like kind of a waste. Yeah, I mean, especially gun disarming, kind of a waste of time. People want to live in a movie, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but. Yeah, so a lot of it is really ridiculous, especially when it comes to gun disarming.
So taking a gun and kicking someone in the balls is not the approach to disarm someone.
It just doesn't work. Most of what people are showing just doesn't work.
I've seen also, this is something that is relatively new, I think. I've seen approaches where they introduce grappling to gun disarmament. So the idea of something that works on the ground as well, like some way to trap an arm or something, and they use that to get a rifle out of someone's hand. Have you seen these videos?
No, I haven't. Thank God. But look, let's make some order here with the
let's set things straight
with the gun disarming thing. So like this, how much pressure does a person need? How much pressure does it take on the trigger to fire? Let's say the most common 9mm. How much pressure? Between 3 to 12 kilo of pressure to press a trigger. That's nothing, right? Any child could do that, right?
Also on purpose, that happens sometimes. That's also a thing that's important to notice.
What do you mean on purpose?
if there's like a clinch situation, a gun could go off on.
All he needs is his finger,
mm-hmm.
and he could shoot. Okay, so
trap the finger then.
Yeah,
that's the BJJ way.
A lot of I think part of the problem of gun disarming is, especially like you take Europe, where guns are not very common, right? A lot of people who teach gun disarming don't know how to shoot. I am sure, I haven't checked this, but I'm sure that a lot of them never even shot.
Mm-hmm.
So how are you teaching gun disarming if you don't even know how a gun works, right?
Because it's easy to take a rubber gun.
It goes like that with everything. Like, okay, you teach someone how to escape a choke, but you don't know how to choke. What are you doing? You don't even know what a person who really knows how to choke is capable of. Okay, you're teaching someone, and I see this a lot. Let's fight. How you fight a wrestler, but you don't know any wrestling. What are you talking about? You know, how what's the first act of war?
Intelligence.
Intelligence, exactly, right? You're going to learn, first of all, to know what your enemy is capable of.
Mhm.
Then maybe you could know how to fight whatever he's going to bring to you. Okay, with the same thing with gun disarming. If you don't know how a gun works, stop
teaching it.
stop doing whatever you're doing. Yeah, as far as that.
And with the when you say most of the people or some of the people who teach it sometimes haven't even touched or shot a gun so far, do you think, or maybe you can elaborate why that's important? Why do you think? Because taking just the movement and teaching it, why couldn't someone who has experience with the gun still teach that part of the curriculum?
Well, first of all, because there's different kinds of guns, and a gun acts a certain way. If there's malfunctions when you grab, depending on where you grab the gun, and also the gun goes off. It makes a boom, and there's a loud noise, and it could be very confusing and very scary, especially if you've never shot before.
I like the description. It goes boom and it's loud and it's scary. That's what guns do.
It's not. It doesn't have to be scary, but if it's the first time.
Yeah, sure.
You know what I mean? So yeah, definitely you should know how a gun functions. And also, I've seen people who like disarm a gun. Okay, whatever, in the class, and they're putting on a show. Look, I'm disarming the gun, and then at the end they hold the gun and point it back at the guy, and from the way that they're holding the gun, it's obvious that they don't know how to shoot.
It's like non-smokers in movies. They hold the cigarettes weird.
Just like the grip.
Yeah.
And even, it's not the case mostly, but even if the case was that your disarm would actually work, but at the end of whatever you're doing, you're holding the gun like an idiot, you lose your credibility for anybody who actually knows how to shoot. But he doesn't know even how to hold a gun. How is he teaching how to disarm it? So that's another issue with gun disarming.
But it's not just about it looks cool, it looks accurate, but it's also about the way you need to notice how a gun might be used in such a scenario. Because especially on most of these YouTube videos, they just stand there and point them at you, and it's
It's also like a guy, it's never going to look like that in a real situation, of course. But the biggest thing about gun disarming, I think, is that to disarm a gun, it's a personality, not a technique, right? You need to have a certain kind of warrior's personality to be able to be standing on the wrong side of the barrel, and then to grab the gun away from someone. You need to be very strong mentally to do that. And that kind of personality doesn't come from training gun disarmings once a week, theoretical, with when you're at school. That comes from warrior development drills. That comes from full contact, from never lose, always forward kind of mentality. And you don't get that mentality from doing gun disarming. Theoretical, choreographed nonsense, really.
So it depends on, especially because I talked about the BJJ approach, which I've seen, which it looks as if in theory it might work, but the important part is grappling in a competition, especially, is there's a setting you it's this understanding, and even you're not in such a danger as in a situation with an active shooter, for instance.
I haven't seen what you're talking about, so I can't give an opinion on something I didn't see. But I could just say this: as long as the other person, the bad guy, has a gun in his hand and has a finger on the trigger, it doesn't matter what you're doing to him. As long as he can move that trigger, he's shooting. So it doesn't matter if you're on the grappling, or you're smashing his face in, with elbows or knees or punches, or you're trying to break his elbow, whatever you're doing. If he can move that finger, he's shooting. That's important to realize and to understand.
And the reason I brought this up is just where grappling on the ground is very technical too, and might be of use in a real life dangerous situation. Especially, I've noticed that some U.S. police departments now train BJJ as a part of their, or I don't know if it's a common thing, but it's I've seen that with some departments, and so there's use for that, even though it's technical. But with the real life approach, I think that's important to understand. If you're in such a situation, it's not about being technically
It
well
makes
versed.
sense. It makes sense to do grappling if you're a cop, because it's going to help you control and restrain someone with using less violence too, right? If you're
So it's good for the person that's being restrained.
Because if you don't know if you don't know enough grappling, you might have to hurt him more in order to restrain him. You have to punch him more, kick him more, use a taser more, all that kind of stuff
To make him compliant.
Exactly. But if you're a good wrestler, grappler, you could control someone without hurting him as much. So that makes perfect sense. I really do think every cop should do BJJ or wrestling. Why not? Of course, but it has its limits. I said this before. It has its limits in street fights, grappling. It's not enough just to do grappling, and especially it has its limits when you talk about gun disarming. As long as the person's moving his finger, and it has a finger on the trigger, you're not disarming anything. That's important to realize with guns. There was a case where a guy was actually he was holding a rifle, and he was shot. He was shot in the head, right? So he died, but because the finger's in his trigger, he still sprayed. He still shot. That's when a person is dying. So you could be smashing his face in. You could be punching him. Anything you want, as long as the gun is still in his hand. All it takes is that's the first thing I said. 3 to 12 kilo of pressure to press the trigger. So that's not a lot, and a person could be in a very bad state, in very bad condition, very injured, whatever. He could still press the trigger.
Also, it could just be like a reaction, like they just have to tense up, and also that might already be an issue, right?
Right. So, a lot of the self-defense techniques with gun disarming, you could see it over and over again on videos, is where, let's say they move at a line of fire, and then they kind of hit the guy 1, 2, 3 punches to the face, and then grab the gun. Now, theoretically, that looks interesting, but you're hitting him in the face, and he's shooting. That's what's happening. Why won't he shoot? Because you punched him in the face, or what? And
that's why they moved out of line.
Yeah,
sure. You have a lot to learn from these people.
Here's the thing: you move he's still shooting.
Yeah,
he's still shooting, and it goes off. It's still it's a problematic situation, So there is 2 principles, let's say, for disarming a gun. I would say 1, you got to move out of line of fire, of course, so you don't get shot right away. But 2, you got to control the gun. And
same principle as with the knife,
no,
right?
It's not the same principle
Not
as
the
with
same
the knife,
principle.
and I'll tell you why. Because with the knife, you have 2 principles. Attack the hand with the knife and control the hand with the knife, right? Once I control the hand with the knife, he can't really be very effective because I'm controlling the stabbing hand. But if I go out of line of fire and then control the hand with the gun, I am not controlling the gun because he's still pressing the trigger.
So I have to watch everything that's behind me.
You have to watch everything that's behind you and everything else. It's whatever you're trying to do is not going to be perfect, and it's never going to look like in the gym. It doesn't work that way. So he still might end up getting shot. As long as he has a finger in the trigger, you or someone else might still get shot. So with the knife, if I control the hand with the knife, he can't really stab effectively. Now I'm controlling his hand. Now I can start elbowing him, biting him, whatever, smashing into him, and I'm doing a good job. With the gun, I went out of line of fire. I control the hand with the gun, and I'm throwing elbows and knees, he's still shooting. So it's not the same with a knife. With a gun, it's notice what I say. Out of line of fire, number one. Number two, control the gun. So, okay, what's the definition of controlling the gun? The gun has to be by you. You have to be the one with the gun. And as long as I don't have the gun, I'm fighting for that control. I'm not going to elbow him. I'm not going to knee him.
You're going to attack
because I'm going to keep that gun out of line of fire, probably towards the floor if I could. And I'm still, all my focus is I'm getting that gun out of his hand.
I've seen you teach this, and now it makes more sense what I've seen. But because this is something that I've noticed where you focus on the hand or the arm that's holding the gun more than the person who is holding it, which is different with knife fighting. You just have to control the knife, and then you have to.
Once you
have
control
to work.
the hand with the knife, the limb, whatever that he's stabbing you with, okay, he might be trying to pull the knife out, but he's no longer effective with that. Now I can start creating damage with my elbows, with my knees, with my teeth.
You go straight in, yeah.
Right. In fact, when you control the hand with the knife, I always teach it this way. I don't try to disarm the knife. It could be a dangerous thing to do. Because if I try to disarm the knife and the person holding the knife still doesn't have enough damage done to him, you'll start wrestling with him. You might lose the grip. You might end up on the ground. And the whole fight will start over again. Right? And a person could really go through, let's say, take a lot of damage, especially in a scenario where he's trying to kill you with adrenaline and all that, and his mindset is crazy. You'd be surprised what he could live through and still try to. So once I control the hand with the knife, you just keep on hitting. You remember I said mashed potatoes? That's right. You hit him until you feel his head is like mashed potatoes. That's how much you're supposed to hit a guy once you get control of the hand with a knife. If you go for a disarm and he's still okay, you'll start wrestling. But with the gun, if I'm hitting him, he's still shooting. So your focus should be only on the gun, right? With using my body weight, using the correct grip, how to grab, where to grab, and how to use my body weight to try to get the gun away from him and into my hands.
That's something you see with beginners with knife fighting, where they throw everything they have onto the knife themselves, but that doesn't really make sense. You have to control the arm, yes, but then you have to work. It's not about getting the knife out, and that's the difference. You put everything you have onto the armed hand with the gun, because that's what makes it most likely that the person at least loses the gun, right?
No, I don't think he'll lose the gun, but I'm just putting control so I could control. I could, for example, if I put all my body weight on his arm, I could also drag him to the ground, maybe make it easier for me to disarm him. Maybe someone could help me by stomping on his head. You know what I mean? I'm putting all my body weight on the gun so I could also maneuver the line of fire towards the ground. Right? So when he does fire, I'm minimizing damage to myself and to other people around, because of the line of fire. But you still eventually need, that's your goal. Your goal is to get the gun out of his hands and into your hands. Not to get him on the ground and then just beat him. As long as his finger's working, you still have a problem. And your person could take a lot of damage and still use his finger. So the focus should be, once you're out of line of fire, obviously out of line of fire so you don't get shot right away at least. The second, your goal should be only get the gun out of his hands. Not hit him, not bite him, get the gun out of his hands. And that's the main difference with knife and with gun. With knife, once I control the hand with the knife, you're good to go. Just beat him. I don't even try to disarm him. But with the gun, I must disarm the gun, right?
Also, there's another difference between, I think, gun and knife threats, because with a knife you can use surrounding objects as equalizer. Maybe there's something you can use to create some distance, to help, maybe a bag or something to trap the knife, anything. But with a gun, that's a very tricky business.
Right. If I had let's say if I was able to break or create distance and take like a big chair or a pipe or something and to create more distance and to use that as a weapon, That could be with a knife. Theoretically, that might be okay, but with a gun, of course not.
Yeah. More
Right.
distance doesn't help you there.
Right. So you must control the gun, not the hand with the gun itself. And
Mhm.
controlling the gun means taking it away from him and putting it into your hands. So his finger has to be off that trigger.
Mhm.
And you'll see over and over and over again. That's what people don't get. And you see over and over and over again. Okay, I'm controlling the hand with the gun. Now I'm smashing his head and I'm hitting him, and then I take the gun away.
Mhm.
I soften him up with strikes. And what do you think he's doing while you're hitting him? He's shooting. Why wouldn't he?
Yeah.
Because you're hitting him.
Yeah.
So, oh, but I punched him. And people who think that obviously never got hit in their face in their life, right? And remember, 3 to 12 kilo of pressure, all it takes. So what if you're hitting him and what?
Mhm.
Right? So the focus, out of line of fire, number one. Number two, control the gun. Control the gun. All my focus is on getting that out of his hands.
I think also there's a difference between the approach of, which we might talk about in a future episode, but confronting a gun threat being armed yourself, and then having the issue of not being armed and how to deal with that kind of situation if a gunman, for instance, walks into the room, the street, whatever, the premises you're in right now. And I think it's important to say most of the stuff we talked about so far is based more on these ideas of these like cool videos where they're like, yeah, he holds the gun to your head, you react, there's some stuff going on, and then you have the gun and everybody claps.
Are you talking about what, an active killer scenario?
No, I'm talking about the difference between just the pure technical approach where you're like, okay, there's a gun.
The technique against a gun, similar to the technique against a knife, I believe I said this with a knife, is irrelevant.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Because no two knife attacks look the same. Okay? So you have principles. Attack the hand with the knife, control the hand with the knife. You may be doing it standing, you may be on the ground, you may be in the clinch, you may be a little bit more far. But that if you go on those two principles and that's your goal, and you're aggressive and you're have a strong mindset and you train correctly, you could do it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Same thing with the gun as far as the principles, that those are not going to change. You're always going to have to obviously not be in the line of fire. And then you have to control the gun.
Sure.
So it doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. You know what I mean? How to do it? Well, the more you do full contact, and the more you wrestle or grapple, the easier it becomes kind of to control something, because you have more experience with that. But the mindset, your idea should be, you need that gun out of his hands and into your hands.
Okay, then let me put it differently. It's not about the technique, but what we talked about so far is the worst case. You're not armed. You have to approach. You have to commit. There's something going on. There's like a moment of clinching. You might need to focus on the gun. What do you do if there's this situation going on? What I'm asking is not being armed, but unarmed in a situation. What are the main things you have to be focused on when you notice there's a gun threat in your proximity?
Like a guy, let's say you're asking about this scenario. Let me understand correctly.
Mm-hmm.
A guy, you have a gun, but a guy walks up to you and puts a gun in your head, even though you have a gun.
No, that's I think that's for a future episode, because that's being armed yourself. I mean, there is shots being fired. What are the things to do now?
That's not a gun threat.
Okay.
That's right. We're talking about gun disarming, gun threat, gun disarming, right? A guy but that's already active killer.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say a guy walks into a school,
starts shooting,
or a movie theater, or any place people are gathering.
But now you're close by.
That's yeah.
And you're unarmed. That's the most important thing. Like, not especially. What do you think about in these situations? What's important now?
Okay, well,
because you're not equipped for the situation. What's important? What are important steps to take right now?
Look, if you notice also how I say an active killer.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people call it active shooter, But there could be a lot of good shooters too. So you don't want to make a mistake.
Mm. Like a police officer might be an active shooter as well.
Just a good civilian who happens to be armed and is trying to help.
Mm.
So that's important. But if you are unarmed, which why would you be unarmed? But okay, never leave home without a weapon. That's my opinion.
And that's the takeaway of today's episode.
Okay, but, if you happen to be unarmed, well, if you're dead anyway, anything you do is a bonus. You know, that's my opinion. So do something, you know, throw something, you know, charge.
Just keep being active. That's the idea.
Yeah.
Keep moving.
You know, a person has to change his magazines or anything like that, right? If you could escape, you could escape, so escape.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But if he's standing at the exit, that's your exit right there. So it's not going to help you to just stand still or do nothing or just lay down. If I'll take you down one by one, you know. But imagine a scenario where there's 100 people in a room, and one guy comes into the room and starts shooting, and then all the people rush at him.
He can't shoot all of them.
Right? There will be people who get hurt, maybe killed, but much, much less than if nobody does anything.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So it's minimizing damage. There's no way that nobody's going to get hurt, obviously. There's no way. It is what it is. But if people have the right mentality of fighting back, you're going to minimize damage big time.
Mm-hmm.
With that. Now, sadly, you know, that usually is not the case. But in a perfect scenario, if everybody just jumped the guy, you know, you minimize damage big time.
That's something that happened quite close by here, where a guy went through a train with a knife and started shanking people. And as far as I understood, people took their luggage and tried sticking it on him. So it's like he's getting mushed and also they're trapping him. And I think it got resolved by a police officer at the next train station. But the main idea of, okay, we approach, we take charge, and then it changes the dynamic of the situation. Now it's not an active killer picking up a victim one by one, but now it's like, okay, there's resistance to this. Maybe someone might just, I'm not sure if that's like a valid point, but even if there's resistance, depending on the situation, maybe someone might decide to escape the situation than rather engage. Maybe that might be a thing too. That's something we teach with fighting as well.
That's also okay. Look, there was some years ago. I don't remember exactly what year, but some years ago there was a person, a terrorist, walked into a school in Israel.
Mm-hmm.
It was in Jerusalem with a rifle, and he walked into like the library, and it was I don't know, it was late. It was like evening, so already not much people were there, you know. Mm-hmm. And he started shooting up basically the kids, right, in the library. And what happened was the rest of the kids outside this high school, actually when he turned to leave, they pushed him back in. One of them even slapped his gun away, like didn't disarm him, but he moved his gun and pushed him back in and closed the door, and they barricaded the door with tables. So what happened was, if I remember correctly, seven people were murdered that night, which is horrible, of course, but not many other people were injured because he was stuck in that room. Mm-hmm. That's kids who took initiative and closed him in, and then eventually off-duty, I think he was a soldier, I think he was an officer, shot him. But that's a good example for people taking initiative.
Stands in.
Right? And if you take a similar scenario, what happened years ago also in the U.S., Columbine, you know that hurt?
Yeah.
So it's also on camera. You could see it. It's horrible. That's taking a very long time. They're changing magazines. The police are outside even, I believe, not doing anything. And kids are running and hiding under the tables, but they're just executing them one at a time. It's a horrible thing to watch. So that's like same scenario pretty much, two different cases, two different reactions.
And that's the horrible thing, that people, especially if there's no awareness, or not awareness, but if that's such a new concept, then I think people sometimes freeze, or they have weird reactions to situations where there's a lot of pressure on them. So for instance, if someone comes up to you and they pick I've seen these videos as well, they pick them off one by one, and people just sat there and waited for their turn, which is that's what makes this all even more horrible. It's like to watch this, and the basic difference is, I'm not sure what makes those kids, or made those kids react the way that they did in the Israel case, but there's initiative.
It's a mentality.
There's initiative.
It's an Israeli mentality. Because in Israel, dealing with terror, sadly, is part of day-to-day life, right? So that's the main difference, Just the mentality is a little tougher, and also look, many of the knife attacks you'll have, or it's the random terror attacks, are stopped by armed civilians, right? I would say most of them probably. It's a mentality thing, because a lot of people serve, and also even if you're younger, it's stuff that happened before. But that's the main difference, You can't save everybody, but you could minimize the damage,
So the idea, or your approach to a situation where you have an active killer, or even a gun threat, if someone just showed you the gun,
it's not the same thing.
Yeah.
Active killer and a gun threat is not the same.
It's not the same thing. Okay.
It's not the same thing at all.
So how's a gun threat different?
Well, first of all, an active killer, the killing already started.
So it's like
it's on.
last
now,
resort.
Anything
Yeah.
you do now is a bonus. A gun threat, I mean, it could be many things. If a guy wants your wallet, give him your wallet. Big deal. Well, it's not worth dying for. That's for sure. So if it's just something like that, a criminal, okay, fine. Money is money, right? But that's the difference with an active killer. He just came to kill everybody. Now the fight's on. Now fight. But there's always a red line, So if you're dead anyway, so fight, I would say, right? So
last resort.
Yeah. So like an example for a gun threat would be like, okay, here, give me your wallet. Okay, here's my wallet. Have a nice day. Take it easy, tiger. But a guy pulls a gun and says, "Get in the car." No. You see the difference? Because the chances of you coming out of the car alive are close to zero anyway. So
it's only getting worse
let's
from the
just
way it started.
let's just go. Let's just do it right now.
Yeah.
Let's do it. Me and you. Boom. See the difference? It's not the same at all. An active killer and a gun threat.
And so you think I've talked to someone who was born in Peru, and the interesting difference between him and me was he was used to everyday muggings. That is something that took place there. It's just something that was part of daily life. So when presented with a gun threat, someone pointed a gun at him. Let's say someone who sat on the back of a motorcycle, and the statement was, okay, here's the gun, give me your money, give me your wallet, whatever. That was something they were used to. There was no panic in this. There was a set of rules to follow. And if everything went smoothly, nothing happened. So that's a way that these things also in different cultures have different reactions. There's like a different code to how you behave in these situations. And especially if it's about making you do something. If it's get in the car, follow me there, or especially with women, if it's something, if they want to gain something from the interaction, then it's up to you. But in general, it's only getting worse from there. And I think then it's more than just okay, I can get out of this very unscathed if I just follow the orders, because then there's something that might follow up, and then it's kind of not the same thing, but then you have this the same concept of, okay, now I have to fight. This is last resort again.
Right. So that's why I said, if you have to fight, and if you understand that you're probably dead anyway, let's go. Let's do it. Let's fight. And then your chances of survival increase. Right? It's always better than zero.
Mhm.
Right? But like I said, if it's just a wallet, okay, it's not a big deal. As far as that, another reason, another like problem why a lot of the gun threats, the techniques, a lot of them don't work, is because they're based on a simple idea. What people don't understand is that they're based on a sequence, right? So I do A, I do B, I do C, I have the gun. But don't forget, you do A, he reacts to you.
Mm-hmm.
He reacts to the first thing you do, and if the first move you did wasn't effective, you got shot. Simple as that.
It's not like an IKEA menu where you have like
Exactly.
1, 2, 3,
so,
and
right. Like the most common thing people try to do when they go out to light a fire is grab the barrel, move and grab the barrel. Ever seen that before?
Yeah.
Well, you're not controlling anything when you do that, because all he has to do is pull. He pulls that way, you pull that way. He has a better grip on the gun. He'll shoot you.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter if you punch him or not. He'll just pull. The natural reaction is to pull the gun back. He wants his gun back. It's his gun, and he'll shoot.
So draw it close to the body, and then see more dangerous.
You have to make sure that the first move you do totally blocks his ability to react effectively to you. Not to react at all, because he's always going to react, of course, but effectively.
Mm-hmm.
So the first move, it's like that with any move you do, any technique, but especially with a scenario like a gun, because all it takes is 3 to 12 kilo.
Mm-hmm.
Especially with that, my A move has to be so effective that now I'm totally controlling the line of fire and the position of the gun, the body weight. So even if he's pulling or whatnot, he still can't be effective. Then I could also start to try to disarm the gun and take it and have it in my hand.
Mm-hmm.
All this, of course, is theoretical, because, it's gun disarming.
Mm-hmm.
I don't focus that much on gun disarming. You notice that on training. It's part of the curriculum, so we do it, but I always find it ridiculous that the amount of time people focus on something like gun disarming when they could be doing striking.
Yeah.
You don't know how to punch, and you're going to disarm a gun. You never strike, you never spar, you never wrestle, you never do anything full contact. You come 2 times a week, and you're going to disarm a gun. Why? Like I said in the beginning, disarming a gun is not about technique. It's about mentality.
Mm-hmm.
It's about mentality, and that mentality could only be built through full contact. That's why it comes together. Full contact always comes together with everything. Because, okay, I have a guy who I never taught him gun disarming. I never taught him that. But I know, just because I know his personality, that if someone sticks a gun in his face and this guy understands that it's life or death right now, he'll go forward and fight.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Because he has a personality of a fighter, of a warrior. But I also know a lot of people who just do like gun disarming level 1,000, They never got punched in their face. They've never been in that scenario. They never do warrior development drilled. In a real scenario where a person puts a gun in your face, your heart is going to fall into your underwear before you're able to disarm a gun.
Mm-hmm.
Especially with the nonsense that they do. So, gun disarming is not about the technique; it's about the personality behind it. That makes sense?
Mm-hmm.
I don't focus on gun disarming a lot, because I prefer to do warrior development drills and full contact, and even of course a lot of knife. That's more common than a gun, right? So yeah, it is in the curriculum. We do go over it. But I prefer to build a fighter, a warrior, and then I know that if he has that scenario, he will be able to do it. But if I'm building a dancer, a guy who's proficient in choreographed moves, if he has a scenario in a real situation, he's not going to be able to do anything.
I think that's also something that that's why I spoke about these very choreographed videos earlier on. I think the issue also is focusing on the technique and what to do if you're there is pretty weird if you don't know how to get there. I think that's a big issue because especially with the one BJJ video that I've seen with gun disarmament, they had this approach where they were at least honest about this idea of, okay, this guy is shooting at like a crowd and you're behind him. That's a different start than being in the focus of his attention.
So you saw a video of an active killer. It's not a gun threat.
It's an active killer and he's shooting already with
that's very different.
With an assault
that's a
rifle.
very different scenario than a gun threat.
Yeah.
Okay. You have an active killer and you're behind him. Take a block, smash the back of his head. Why would you want? You don't need to grapple that thing unless if you have. The first thing you should do is search for a weapon as you're running at him. That's the first thing you should do. And like I said, don't leave home without a weapon. But let's say you forgot it that day. Weird. Okay. Grab something. Grab a chair. Grab a rock. Jump on and just bite if you're behind them. Right? You don't have to always stick. I love grappling. I do. But you don't have to stick it out everywhere all the time. Just, that makes sense?
It's the ultimate self-defense. That's what a lot of people tell you about grappling.
You don't have to. I mean, it's great. It's really, really great. But if I'm behind someone and I have a weapon, which could be anything, screwdriver, stick it in the back of his head as hard as you can. That will end the scenario right there on the spot. Right? A rock, a pipe, a chair, a table. Smash a table on his head. Mm-hmm. Right? Keep it simple. Right? But again, I didn't realize when you said it in the beginning, I thought you talked about a gun threat. That's an active killer. That's something. That's not the same scenario.
Yeah. Also, I think that's the danger with the martial arts approach, where you have a very high level, complicated exchange of techniques when you have a martial arts fight.
You don't have to have a beautiful solution for every problem, right?
It has to be effective.
Because I grapple, it has to have a grappling solution. You don't have to do that. Mm-hmm. That's why I said it's about mentality, right? Now there's an active killer. Well, kill him. Run at him and kill him. And that mentality comes from warrior development drills. It doesn't even come mostly from full contact, sparring, MMA. All that's great, but that's why with ICCS at least we do warrior development drills. One of the reasons is because of that. Mm-hmm. You got to switch that beast mode on, and that's no joke. Now it's time to go beast mode. You want to kill him. Active killer, that's what you want to do. Mm-hmm. Right? Not grapple him, not wrestle him, not box him, not MMA him, whatever you want. Mm-hmm. Kill him. If you're behind him, find a way to kill him. Right?
And that's the dangerous approach, to be like the more technical way is always the most effective. That is not the case with, especially also when you talk with bouncers, for instance. Those are not always like the best level BJJ black belts. That's not what it's about. It's about being effective in what you do. And that's different from just being very technical with it.
Grappling is great. Boxing, everything has its limits though. Mm-hmm. Part of that is an example what we're just talking about now. Your mindset is the wrong mindset if you're gonna jump on him and start grappling with him. Mm-hmm. Right? If 10 people jump on him, yeah, okay, everybody helps together. Run over to him, take a rock and put it in his brainstem.
Problem solved.
There you go. Lights off. Do. You know that?
The Pac-Man thing.
Yeah. Anyway.
I think that might be a weird point, but a perfect point to wrap up. Is there something you want to add?
No, it's all good.
I think that's a pretty much, it summarizes the whole thing. Don't overthink it, do. And I think that's something that warrior development drills do. They prepare you for that.
That's exactly what they're there for. That's exactly what they're there for.
Yeah.
You know, I love martial arts and I do it all day. And be a martial artist, of course, be a professional. But also have that in you to go beast mode. And now it's time to hunt.
Yeah.
It's time to run at the guy and hunt. And you don't get that without warrior development drills. You don't get that.
Mm-hmm.
You're not, you make the mistake that you're, in a fight in MMA or whatever now. You're not wrestling the guy. We do a lot of wrestling, of course, in training. We go over and over again why, so I'm not going to say it again, but we do it a lot. We love it. But that's not the time to wrestle.
Mm-hmm.
A guy's shooting, it's the time to kill. That makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Sharir.
Right,
I think that wraps it up perfectly.
All right. Thank you.
Guys, we'll see you guys next week. Until then, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.